I live? I think I'm live. I think I'm live, and if I am, welcome to... We got some dead air here, and I don't like dead air, so here's what we're going to do. Yes, I am, John. I just noticed that. Welcome to Model Railroading Live. The show is Who's Big Bill Talking To? And I started today being alive. I woke up this morning, and God bless me for doing so. I greatly appreciated that. So we are live right now. Usually we get a countdown, but we didn't get it. But this is Model Railroading Live, the #1 model railroading show in the world. And am I frozen? We're having a little bit of a went live to dead air. I noticed. Anyway, let's get this together. Hey, Big Bill, Pirates of the Model Trains, Mickey Cullens, Wig Wag Workshop. Hope all is well this fine evening. I hope it is. It is. Thank you. Eric Hall of the IMRRO.com. Good job being alive today, Bill. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Manshed Railroad. Hello, everybody. John Banachek says that we are alive. Lynn McCurdy and the HDMMRC says hello. And Dwight of Northern Star. Hello. Chris Lambert. Jerry's in the house. Jerry Santero. Art McKeevy's here. Let's see who else. Dwight, Model Railroading Live, Alan McKeevy, Pirates of the Model Railroading. So we're down. Fred E. Model is in the house. Hello, Brad's Trains, and Sue the Milwaukee Road. Hello. Yes, hello to you too. Anyway, so here we are. We are live. Model Railroading Live. Who's Big Bill talking to tonight? We are the #1 model railroading show in the world, if not the universe, in case you didn't get that memo. So, but before we start and I introduce my guest, I'd like to tell you that I have some announcements and a shameless plug to make. Let me go to my technical stuff here. Johnny's Train Talk. Whoa, what am I reading here? I got some good news for you guys. In December, starting December 15th through the 18th, it's a trifecta. A trifecta. December 15th, the 16th, and the 18th. 3 shows back to back, skip a day to the back on Model Railroading Live. On the 15th, we're going to have Who's Big Bill Talking To with Dave Voma, a model railroader that was recommended to me, and he's graciously accepted to be on the show. That's on the 15th. On the 16th is Johnny's Train Talk show, where you guys can come in and be a part of it. And I say this every week, and nobody ever does it. I don't know why, but you don't have to, but you can be part of the Q&A. Okay? And then on the 18th, that's not the next day. The next day would be Friday, and then it follows with Saturday. On the 18th, Saturday evening, will be Railroad Empires with Robert Holman and Andy Crawford, talking about how we build it and what they're doing on their layouts, and the modules as well as Robert's layout. So there'll be some updates on that as well. And all the shows start at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Model Railroading Live. So let's see. Trying to see what we got. Oh, and the shameless plug. Yeah. My good friend Scott Thornton. You know Scott Thornton. We had him on Proto Throtto. The guy started his own 3D printing business. And one of the things he makes is this little bad boy. Now, this is a track cleaner. And what he did was it's real simple. You can just, I got to push this way. I can't do it. But anyway, he's got these micro pads, micro sheets that you put on. I've been using it, so it's pretty dirty, but it stamps down. It's a 2-piece thing here. trying to see if I can get this up. Oh, there it goes. There we go. It's a 2-piece with a handle on it, and you place it, and you can just squeeze it down and over the microfiber, and you can get it from scottsmodelshop.com. Scott Thornton has done that. He's also done the derailer. See, it fits right back in. It's not that tight. I'm just doing it for demonstrations on live. But I've been using it to clean up the rail. It's got a nice little handle here and everything. So that's pretty good. And he's been making the derailers. You know Tommy Kaminsky? Tommy Kaminsky, I don't know if you can see this, but those are the derailers that he's been printing up, and he sells them. So it's scottsmodelshop.com. If you guys want to head on over there and check it out, it would be really good. You know, he's starting out and everything. So, you know, everybody's getting into the 3D printing. So that's pretty cool, which is good. I'm glad to see everybody's doing something. So that's my shameless plug that I give every once in a while. We got Eric Hall here too. Eric Hall does the wild hair 3D printing, something worthwhile. You guys could go check out Eric's shop too. So Eric, if you want, you can put it up in the Q&A. Be more than happy for people to see it. You know. Anyway, let me not digress here, and let me get into who we're having tonight. We've been trying to get this guy on for a while, and every time we did, we'd miss. He was very busy, couldn't come on. Then our good friend Dwight of Northern Star met him at the railroad show and said, "Hey, Big Bill's been trying to track you down, stalking you like a sick puppy lover." You know, well, I don't even. That's a little weird, right? That's creepy. Anyway, with that said, we got him in the green room. It's a little cold in there because we forgot to pay the heating bill. So let me bring him in before he gets frostbite. Bill Sampson from Sioux Line, the Milwaukee Road. You didn't eat the? Please tell me you didn't eat the gasoline sushi. Oh, brother, are we in for it tonight?
Boy, I thought that was pretty tasty.
Oh man, it's been in there for quite a number of months.
Well, I like cottage cheese, so I mean, if I like cottage cheese, that's old milk. So this sushi is perfect.
Oh, brother, you're a better man than me, man. A better man than me.
How you doing tonight?
I am well, Bill. Thank you so very, very much for being on our show. I know the restraining order you got out against me was lifted because I've been hounding you. And like I said, Dwight Crisp at Northern Star, he saw you at a train show and mentioned that we were trying to get you on. And
well, I'm glad we could get here. That was great.
Yeah.
I ran into Dwight a couple of times. I ran from him twice, but he tackled me the second time. So
see, he's persistent.
He's tenacious. He's tenacious. That's all right.
He is. That's our followers. That's our guys that like us. They want to have that good content. So again, Bill, you have the channel called Sue, the Milwaukee Road, and it's GN 1970. That's your father's too, as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so my dad's the GN in 1970, and I model the Milwaukee Road in 1985, which is Sue the Milwaukee Road. That's the merger of the Soo Line and Milwaukee Road, which as a kid, I was 5 years old at that point. My dad was bringing me to the rail yards, and to be able to see a lot of that equipment, that's kind of what started the foundation of what I like modeling. But I think a lot of us model to our childhood, or at least into what we consider kind of the yesteryear, the prime years of the model railroad or the railroading world, the prototype railroading world.
Now, Ari, just to bring something into Ari McKeevy says, could be a short show. It could be a short show after eating that. He says, I haven't cleaned out that refrigerator in quite a while. And since it's been broken, it hasn't really been cold. But
well,
you're a braver man than me. But you're from where? Minnesota?
Yeah, just northwest of Minneapolis.
Yeah, so you're a hardy soul. You're a hardy soul. You're used to those cold winters.
What room temperature is just for the average person in Minnesota? It's 32 degrees, so it should be okay.
Okay. So was your dad? Did he work for the railroad?
My dad didn't, but my grandparents did. So I had a grandpa and a great grandpa that did, and then a couple of great uncles. They worked for the Great Northern, which I think that's what's it actually influenced my dad into the Great Northern modeling. And just guilt by association, I kind of glommed onto it as well. So I do like Great Northern. He models right at the transition too, so it's when the BN started.
Hmm.
But family history wise, it goes back to the next generation that my grandparents' generation that worked on the railroad.
Oh, okay. So, and your dad, what if you don't mind me asking, what did he do for a living?
He still is a precision machinist, so he does a lot of really refined parts for like Boeing and so aircraft, some stuff for the military. But his attention to detail then a lot of times is he works in that very very small, a few thou, looking at coupler heights and wheel gauge and all that stuff. So the railroad actually has benefited from his working career being a precision machinist, I think, because he looks at a lot of that precision detail, whether it's the couplers or the wheels.
Right. So everything runs spot on.
Well, you'd like it to, and if it
Yeah, we
doesn't,
always do.
he wants to know why.
Yeah, exactly. It's everything comes to a standing still stop until we figure it all out. Which is true, which I get it. So how long have you had your layout, and what was the genesis of your layout?
So my railroad itself, technically, if you want to get technical, I started it back in like 2013, 2014. And I did that by the idea of I'm going to do a shelf layout. So I'm going to build just shelf modules that will go into a room eventually. So I had laid track, I had a track plan all kind of set up, but I needed to build the room. Well, I didn't get that room built until 2018. And I'm actually going to show you guys the room that I went into. So it was an unfinished basement. And I'm going to throw up here, if I can share my screen.
Is this the house you're presently in now?
It is currently the house I'm in right now. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to show you guys here if we can pull this up. This is, I'm going to go into preview mode so you can see it a little bit better. So this is the room itself. The room size-wise is roughly 10 by, I want to say it's 10 by 12. So you're looking at 10 feet from this corner in, and the railroad's going to sit on that shelf you see on the left-hand side. And then as I progress forward, the 12 feet go from roughly where the light switches are across to the wall. So it's a slight little L, but that's the room that I started in. And I did put a Murphy bed in. So that Murphy bed is a queen size bed that just allowed us to still have a guest room. But if I'm going to be in there, I want not to have all the stuff on the ground. Now, this
Right.
was kind of the process of getting my shelving system built. This one is sitting upside down. So you see the shelf, it's actually inverted. I'm just priming it at that point.
Hmm.
But then back into the room, this is again the room itself. And the date on this is, I think we're looking January 7th, 2020. So you got to fast forward. I've been in the house now at this point about 10, 11 years, and I finally got the railroad room done.
So,
Go
uh,
ahead,
uh,
Bill.
uh, just out of curiosity, now I see that shelf on the left-hand side of the bed. How wide is that shelf?
Okay, so it is, the shelf itself is 12 inches deep. So what you physically see there is 12 inches deep, and the railroad is actually 13. And I've got
Mhm.
like this here. So you're looking at that. That's 12 inches deep because I was working with 1x12s, and I was just taking 1x12s and ripping them with this angle on it.
Mhm.
And that's what set the depth. But the other side, with the shelf side of things, I still wanted the ability to get around the bed.
Right.
And the
Makes
bed still
sense.
has 15 inches from the front edge of the layout to the edge of what is the Murphy bed.
But the bed will be in an upright position unless.
Like this here. Yep.
Right, right. So okay, so you'll have that ability to walk around and stuff like that. So
Exactly.
the design of the 12-inch shelf, a lot of people when building a layout, they always want to go for the wide. But here we go again. You seem to have a lot of trackage on there.
And that's just it. So you can see I laid the track on this section over here, and I laid the section here, and I just had my corner section to build. A lot of times we want to try to cover every square inch we have. Well, the Hiawatha Elevated District is just a narrow corridor, so all I am doing is really looking at the actual buildings.
Right.
I'm not diving into a lot large scenes and stuff like that. I'm really focused on operations and trying to maximize my space. And in a space like this, we felt like that was the best solution for what I was working with.
Right. And in doing so, you kind of like if you kind of like compressed your operations, because what is it that you're, because I saw your the video on the old Willard. Is that what the Willard Tower?
It would have been Westminster Tower, and that actually is on my dad's railroad. So there's two different worlds there, but that tower is Westminster on his railroad.
Right, but I saw you did a video of a tour of an old.
Yes, you're referring to. So I did walk through with Gary Nelson. I'm going to
Right.
close out the screen share here, but I did a tour with Gary Nelson, and he's a former Great Northern employee. He started back in 1930 or 1967 rather, and he worked for the Great Northern, and he took us through the Wilmer Depot. So if anybody
Right.
wants to see inside that depot, we did a nice little about a 20-minute video. Gary walks us through there. We go talk about the past. You can find that even on the YouTube channel, or even just search Wilmer Depot tour, and you'll find us looking at that depot. But that's what you were referring to. Sorry.
Right. So is that part of what you're modeling?
It's what my dad's modeling. So my dad
Okay.
he models from Minneapolis to Wilmer. So on his railroad, he does cover that portion. And in fact, I think I do have a shot of what would be Wilmer Yard and the depot that you're referring to. So I'm just going to pop it up here for you guys real quick.
While you're getting that, Mojave Model Railroad, Tina, she says, I love your YouTube channel, well edited, and I love the wit and the humor. Plus, it is very, very informative.
Well, I'm glad that you find the wit and humor, and as well as the information. I just have fun with it. I think the hobby itself is fun. The way it all kind of started, doing a YouTube channel, that's actually my dad in the picture there on the right. And then Colin is our electrician in the background. But the Wilmer Depot that Bill alluded to as the model of it is just right here on the left-hand side.
The gentleman with the plaid shirt is your dad?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Oh, he looks really young.
Well, he'll take that as a compliment. Either that or I look really old.
No. I mean, when did he have you? Like when he was like 15 or something?
No, he would have been probably 20 or so.
Oh, okay.
I was born in 1980, and I'm going to throw his age out there for you, but 1959. So we're...
Oh, I'm older than him. I'm 66. I was 55, so he's
okay.
About 63, right? It's 59. Yeah, about that. 60, about early 60s.
But the YouTube content started because of him indirectly, and that was just because he asked some questions about how to weather freight car trucks. And if you go to the YouTube channel, I do have a little video about how I weather freight car trucks. And I never claimed to be the answer or the only way to weather a freight car truck, but that way he could always reference the steps I was taking. And the next thing you know, it snowballed a little bit more. I did another one. And then I kind of thought, you know what would be kind of cool is if I just did like a series where I just can do 10 videos. I'll cover what we're doing. I'll do some highlights on, some weathering techniques, or in this case, just kind of showing what the railroad looks like. But that's what started it. And that's kind of what has continued to, evolve into these other episodes and videos that I've kind of done. So I appreciate the compliments, as well as, I'm honored that people like it and consider it a good production.
Yeah, Split Rock 323 says Wilmer is the first division point west of the Twin Cities on the old Great Northern.
Thank you, Tom. That's Tom, who is another exceptional modeler. He does the Split Rock Mining Company. You guys might have seen him on YouTube as well.
We have to get Split Rock 323 on Tom on the show.
Well, Tom is a plethora of information, extremely nice guy. And one of the things that he's always said that if he's going to give any model railroad or something, it's his time, because that's the most valuable thing that he has. And the videos that he's done, even on YouTube, it's great. It's cool to see some of the stuff that he's working on. And if anybody doesn't know who Tom is, I do have some shots. This is his railroad. That's the Split Rock
Ooh.
Mining Company. So he's an Elko guy. If you're an Elko modeler, you got to like Tom's Railroad. He does a really nice job with details, and I know that's a fun railroad to operate. So great guy. If you can get him on, I think it's definitely worth the time and for viewers to enjoy the content that Tom
Absolutely.
can share.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's really nice looking. That's really good detailed stuff too.
It's cool. Like
Yeah.
the pictures, I don't ever think do it quite justice.
Oh, I don't. I
When you
think
see
you're
stuff
right.
in person, it's just mind boggling the stuff
Right.
that he does.
I think you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. You know. Let's see. Eric Hall says that your dad looks like your older brother.
Well, we get that at shows a lot of times, and we kind of joke that he is kind of a brother of sorts. I've always said he's the one that's inspired me to get into model railroading. One of the best things I think that the hobby does is brings people together. But I mean, I'm more than fortunate to be able to have him as kind of the one that we bounce ideas off. We listen to podcasts while working on the railroad, and we kick ideas around. Like this happens to be one of the cars that goes on his tail car to the Gopher Badger.
Right.
I like LEDs. I like kind of playing with this type of stuff. It's something he doesn't like to do. So I'm fortunate enough that I can install some of this stuff, and you can kind of enjoy the eye candy on the railroad.
Sure. Sure. So what basically are you modeling? A certain section of a railroad, or is it just freelance prototypical?
No, it's a specific section, and I don't have the map on my computer at the moment, but it is just south of Minneapolis. If anybody knows the Hiawatha Elevated District, it was a series of elevators that I would say there's probably at one time 8 to 10 elevators. Colin T. Hart has done a phenomenal job covering this area, and he actually provides me with a lot of information. But it's not far from downtown Minneapolis. If you go to Google and you went to Minneapolis, look south, not even probably a half mile to a couple miles, you'll see this very distinct corridor, and that's the Hiawatha Elevated District. So
Oh,
that is what I model, and again, I shoot for circa 1985.
mm-hmm. And what kind of track do you use?
I'm using Atlas Flex, and then I'm also using Walther's turnouts. So they're the Walther's Shinohara kind of combination turnout. And
How
one
do
of
you
the
like? I was just going to ask you how you like those turnouts.
I think they're okay. I wouldn't consider them amazing. And the only reason I say that is because I think there's a little bit of issue with um just the redundancy of tie spacing, maybe the scale of the spikes, and you're starting to get a little, nitty gritty when you're looking at
Mhm.
that stuff. But I feel like a lot of times it looks too machined, where I see guys that like Tom that do the hand laid stuff and they space their ties out. And that's an advantage, obviously, for guys that are hand laying track.
Mhm.
But overall, my experience, I would say I'm very pleased with how well all of it functions, the DCC capabilities, all that stuff to me, it works it's kind of a hand in hand. And
Right.
I'm happy with it. I wouldn't change what I've done.
Right. Right. And watching your videos, I see that you're very meticulous to detail. Like I watched you with the track. We were talking earlier that you're meticulous in the switches and cutting back the switches and making them really fit well. And I tried that, and I have to say that it worked extremely well.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think is actually just kind of fun. I'm pulling up a detailed video here of the actual switch throwing, but the detail that goes into what you're referring to is it's basically interlocking two turnouts together, and that to me is
Right. That's what I
it
wanted to.
simplifies the crossover. It gets rid of extra rail joiners, and thinking outside the box a little bit is what I'm kind of striving for with that. Now here you're seeing the GP20 sitting there, but there I've got the switch stand that throws with the points. And if
Right.
you'll hit it one more time there, just so you can see the points as they throw and the target turns with it. That's simply done underneath the railroad by basically telling the thing with the linkage, as soon as the turnout throws, that linkage will pull and turn the target as well.
Right. Right.
But to your point on the crossovers, that all came about, and I don't think I've got a great shot of a straight down image of the turnout. I might have one in. I'm just going to
I
scroll real quick there, but go ahead, Bill.
No, I'm just saying. I know that when I first saw it, I was like it was like the light bulb went off, and I was like, "Wow, that eliminates so much extra stuff that and it makes it look so prototypical."
Yeah, it
And
cleans it up a lot. That's
and
the
the
one of
tra-
the things that I thought. I like it. It's cleaner look.
and the transition of the train going through it was a lot smoother and a lot more efficient. I guess that would be the word I'm
Well,
looking
almost
for.
kind of natural because it does
Yes,
follow the
yes,
contour of a normal
yes.
turnout.
Turnout. Right, exactly. That's exactly what it was like, you know. So it was very, very to watch it, and very simple to do, once you know, you got that gist of it, and you watched it. Well, I watched it like 45,000 times. So then it was like but your videos are very, very unique in the fact that you call them seasons,
Mhm.
like TV. How did that come about? And
Well, that's actually, I mean, it's one of those things that I thought for myself, what it did, it allowed me to set up basically 10-week windows where I can focus and work on specific projects on my railroad or on my dad's railroad. We're going to start up, it'll be on this Friday, is we're starting up the Gianna 1970, which will be season 3. And that will focus on the majority of it being my dad's railroad. We talk about operations, but I also talk about coupler heights and just upgrades to locomotives. My dad unfortunately had a Rapido SW1200 that he had kind of lightly weathered, and then he went to clear coat it,
uh-huh.
and the clear coat frosted on him.
Ooh.
So a cringeworthy moment. He tried to back it up and tried to get it, back into at least a representation of the way it should look. And I'm going to actually cover how I'll back it up because he dropped it off this past weekend. And I'm going to go through it and see if I can't clean it up, re-weather it, and then respray it and hopefully save it. I mean, we're not the only, I don't think he's the only one. I don't think we're the only ones that have ever had a frosted clear coat, but it happens and we're going to address it. So we are going to cover that.
So when you're doing your videos and you're doing a season, it says Split Rock 323 wants to know what did it feel like when Scale Trains announced their SDL 39s?
Well, it's very convenient. Tom knows kind of the inside side of things. I am going to give you a look at the SDL 39 that I've got myself, which is this locomotive here. It's going to pop it up on the screen here for you guys. This is the locomotive that got Scale Trains to produce the SDL 39. And the reason I say that is because as soon as you put in this application, it's got 19 LEDs. It's an extremely detailed locomotive. And as you can see, the sister unit is paired up behind it. But I put all this work into it. And as soon as I get that work done, what do you think Scale Trains comes out and says? We're making the SDL 39. And this is to everybody else, you're welcome. I'm glad I could bring this to you, but if I didn't model it, they wouldn't have made it. That's kind of an inside joke, but I think a lot of times, I mean, I do think it's a labor of love. I do really like the modeling side of things. This engine itself is probably the one I put the most amount of work into. I mean, you can see I did the step lights. I've got the ground lights. Like I said, 19 LEDs. It's got the proper strobe on top. But
Uh-huh.
putting that work into it and then finally having a manufacturer come out with it, I had asked manufacturers for years, you can make the STL 39. You're going to make the STL 39. And they're like, no, go ahead and work on your brass ones. Go ahead and scratch build one. And lo and behold, 2021 or now in 2022, they're going to have them come in. So I do have one on order. I actually have a couple on order. So I look forward to seeing them. They're bandits for people that, this is known as the Milwaukee Road billboard scheme. The Sioux line
Right.
actually painted big black squares over them. So that's what they're going to arrive as. And that's what Scale Trains is doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love Scale Trains. Their rendition of locomotives. I think they do a really good job and stuff. That's really nice.
Now that's those locomotives again, all LEDs. They got 4 LEDs in each beacon. So each beacon has the proper, I think they're called an RB something. You guys might be able to know better than I, but it's an RB beacon that 4 separate bulbs light. And so it's got 4 LEDs in there. And of course, there's an
Oh,
LED in each class light down in the steps and the headlights. The number boards are lit. So it's a labor of love. I like LEDs, but for anybody that doesn't like LEDs and goes cross-eyed with them, this probably make you go crazy.
yeah. Drew Dude's model train says Williams Bill's custom one will be better than what Scale Train makes.
Well, that's a compliment if I've ever heard one. I'm hoping. The one thing I do like about the brass though is that all the stanchions and the grab irons stay rigid, which a
Yeah,
lot of our injection molded stuff
stuff is
is flexible.
yes,
But
yes.
Rapido's come out. They're doing some metal grab irons, which is actually kind of nice because it's a hybrid. I think they've got brass and plastic.
Yeah, Randall Ellis says it's a Stratolite beacon.
Thank you. That's right. He's got it.
There we go. Randall Ellis, guess I need to start practicing my kit bashing skills and build a Burlington Northern C30-7 so they'll produce one. LOL. Yeah, you're right.
No, I think he is. There's definitely something for that because I think a lot of times as modelers, as soon as we develop or create something, that's when they will come out with it. So put
Well,
your heart and soul into it, and it'll happen.
well, being the cynic in here, I'd like to think, oh yeah, that's what the people want, so we're going to do that. When in actuality is like, oh, now we can start making money from it.
Well, there is that. I mean, there's always that element. If they wouldn't make it if they weren't able to make something on it.
No,
So.
I get it, but it's not, if what my point is, like, if enough people, said, hey, we'd like to have this certain engine, and you got like over 100 people or 50, saying, hey, this is what we'd really like to see, and then we don't know, and then you come along, you make one, and then they see it, and then people are clamoring. Then they said, yeah, all right, we'll get into it, we'll make it for you. No problem. Oh, no, not, that's what capitalism is. I get it, and I'm all for it. Human City Junction Heat says, I was just looking at a GN locomotive. Looks like it was Kismet, and I need to go ahead and get it. Split Rock 323 wants to know, what about your fading paint method by dunking the model underwater?
No, it's a very bizarre technique. The car that I actually did it to, I'm going to pull it up here, is a Great Northern Air Slide. I did a video on this, and what I did is basically dull coat your car, and then you're going to go and take the model and chalk it with white. So I used Doc O'Brien's weathering powders. I chalked the entire car white. Now, again, I do cover the exact steps and process that I go through, but this is the car that I started with. It's a tangent air slide, and that car itself gets covered in all white after I've dull coated it. And then I'm looking for the after shots that I had of that car because it did take a little while. Here they are. This is what happens after. So I submerge the entire car after I chalk it in white. I put it into water. And it seems like a weird thing to do, to take a $40 model, cover it in white chalk, is fairly heavy, and I sink it in water, and I take another brush and I lightly remove the chalk. And the reason I've gone that route was because you can visually see what you're going to get for results. Where a lot of times if you weather a car and you spray dull coat on it, you're going to look at it and see, oh, it got darker. I lost the weathering that I did on it. But this is a faded car using that technique. Now, Paul Becker, who's a fellow modeler here in the Twin Cities, he's the one that shared it with me. And I'm going to throw him under the bus a little bit here. So sorry, Paul, if you see this, but he had an accident with a locomotive and ran into that he thought, all right, fine, the locomotive's ruined. I'm going to put it underwater and scrub it off. And then the next thing he knew, he took it out of the water and it looked like it was faded. So consider it a happy accident of sorts. But that's what kind of got the fading effect kind of where it was at. And, Paul, I thank you for the process. For anybody that's watched it, I have used it on different locomotives. I know one of you guys said we needed a GN GP7 or GP9. This is the Athearn one that they did. Similar type of technique. If you see this in person, this thing is lightly weathered. I didn't submerge the locomotive in water, but I did apply the locomotive shell in the water and then lightly chalked it. One thing to note on this particular style is that this is an Athearn Genesis unit, and if you're a rivet counter out there, the big detail is the 5 steps that the locomotive has, because the Great Northern actually had 5 steps. So you look at something like that and you say, Well, it only had 4 steps. Well, the purists out there know that they had 5. So that's kind of that drawbar factor. You know what I mean, Bill?
I got lost, you guys, for a little bit, and I had to
Oh,
go
I
out.
tried to carry the boat. These guys
Okay.
heard me ramble briefly, so
Okay,
I
good,
filled the
good,
void.
good, 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 good. Human City Junction Heath wants to know: does William have an online presence where we can see his technique? Yes, it's called Sue the Milwaukee Road. That's the name of the YouTube channel. One of the other things. So, yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, I'm
And
gonna
I'll
get
even
back.
tell you directly, I'm pulling it up on my screen at the moment, but it is actually season 5, episode 8, How to Weather a Scale Train's Air Slide. And you'll see that technique that I just talked about in full detail. I go through all the steps that I took to go through that and make that, particular car come to life. I consider, like I said, it's kind of a cringe-worthy moment, but at the same time, it's a technique that is another tool in your tool shed because I don't use it all the time. I've done it on 3 or 4 different cars.
Have you used it on box cars?
Let me take a look. I do not have a box car. I do have an air or a center beam. Here's a center beam for you guys to take a look at. So the center beam, same technique that I show in the video of how I sync the car, but this is what it looks like when I do the actual car itself. And it'll pop up here. So the bottom one is the car that had been submerged in water. So I went from this is factory on top, and then the faded version on the bottom. I think overall, how it turns out, I'm always happy with it. It's kind of a happy accident, like I said, of sorts. But when it really comes down to it, to be able to see those type of details, to me, is kind of neat. Now, there are other techniques applied to this car. What I do use, here's a couple of the materials I use. The panel line accent color. If you don't know how to weather a freight car, this thing can accidentally help you because
Yes.
it's
Yes.
very, very forgiving.
Yes, it is. I have yes.
And then the
When
other
you
thing that I use is they're called AK Interactive. They're colored pencils,
yes.
and that's what gives you this rust effect and the
Right.
chipping.
Yeah.
And the rest of the car, as far as the faded color, is in that submerged in water technique that helps basically just fade that yellow so it's not so stark because that factory yellow is pretty intense.
Yeah. When you put the white powder on from O'Brien's powdering kit, do you saturate it
Pretty
like
heavy. I would
like
say I
like you
dull coat the
like you
car and I put it on so it really chalks it out and it looks
like
pretty
you're bread
heavy.
in a veal cutlet?
I don't know. I've never done that.
You've never breaded a chicken cutlet before?
Nope.
Oh, well, like or just like breading a piece of, would you put it on heavy like, flour?
Well, I wouldn't probably roll the car in it.
That's what I'm getting at.
Getting at. Yeah. No, I lightly I was gonna see if I had a screenshot even of the process of how I chalked it, but I would say as far as the chalks are concerned, you just want to just get an even coat of white, just so it looks even. That's the
Right,
biggest thing. If it looks blotchy, it's probably going to come out blotchy. But if you
right,
put your chalk down even, it comes out fairly smooth.
right. And you submerge it. The temperature of the water makes no difference. It can be lukewarm,
Nope.
cold,
Yeah,
warm.
I go for lukewarm because I don't want my fingers in cold water. But
Sure,
I'm a
sure, sure.
delicate flower, you see, Bill.
I hear you. Indian Head Valley Railroad says, William, how did you come up with the Curmudgeon character?
So the Curmudgeon character, he actually, I do have. Let me see if I had one on there. I thought I had one up here, but the Curmudgeon character himself is actually a culmination of all modelers. So if we're at flea markets and we hear guys talking about stuff, we all collectively discuss and bring up different topics that we think is either annoying or a nuisance or whatever. And when I hear that, I think, boy, a lot of people complain about stuff. But a lot of times, if you complain about it in person or directly to somebody, it becomes offensive or they're bothered by it. I thought, you know what? If you do an alter ego or the Curmudgeon, which is just a character, this is a group that has actually had gathered together. This is a Curmudgeon convention, which is it's not exactly what this would be. But if we pull this up here, I wonder if that group will fly live. But there it is. This is a Curmudgeon convention. Now, it is actually the Twin Cities Modelers Retreat, which is put on by Ken Ziska and the NMRA group of guys here in the Twin Cities. They do a phenomenal job, but this is where I get the content for the Curmudgeon. We just sit and BS and talk. And after we've had a conversation about, different topics, whether it's couplers or, metal wheels, whatever it might be, that's what creates the Curmudgeon. The Curmudgeon really is a culmination of all of us to a certain degree.
Right. Split Rock 2023 says that to Human Junction, Heath, he says that you are on his podcast. Is it his podcast or is it an hour podcast thing?
It's an hour. I mean, Tom is the one that sets it all up, and he's actually kind of the one that pulls all the strings and gets us, wild little animals all together at once, and we can have our conversation. But again, it's collectively kind of us group modelers up here in the Twin Cities. Much like your conversation we're having here, these guys that are in the thread are all guys that, I've been able to communicate with and connect with that I never would have connected with ever if it wasn't for a forum like this, or like the podcast Tom refers to. It's the Twin Cities Crossing Gate podcast. So you can go on any platform, pull up the Crossing Gate podcast, and it's myself, it's Tom Gazer, Dan Dosa, Greg Dahl. There's a smattering of us, Joe Binish. There's kind of a core little group, but it's not always all of us all at the same time. We just get together and BS and talk about trains and hopefully have a little fun with it. And I think we do.
And speaking about that, what is one of the things that you get from model railroading? I mean, and being involved with other modelers, like you said earlier, it's not the way I do it. It's not the be all to the end all. This is how I do it. It's not the way you should do it. But what is it that you walk away from when you have these, like on this podcast, what do you walk away from conversations with other modelers like that?
I think a lot of times it's just the experience and shared, in a way, it's kind of the shared follies that you've gone through that you can look at and say, I'm not the only one that, that flash had a dull coat finish flash white, because they chime in and go, oh, you just do this, this, or this. And you say, okay, well, then now you can take that information, go home, and at least try and apply it. And I think that's a lot of times where we as modelers end up looking at something and not always taking what we do and, I guess, admitting that the faults are there. And then when we have the group of guys like we do, we can admit that the faults are there, and it's not really, we're not the only ones that have it happen. I guess that's the best way I can answer it. But that modelers retreat that I had mentioned before, that really is a great way to be able to meet people. And, at the end of the day, that's what our whole group and these type of conversations are all about, is exchanging ideas. That's why I do the YouTube channel. That's why I sit down with the podcast with Tom and the guys. We like to be able to talk trains, share the ideas, because without, us fellow modelers, we don't really have a whole lot going on. It's just us doing it on our own.
I guess I am going to have to retrain Bill.
All right.
To quit wrapping his foot around the power cord of the computer.
All right. So he's got to come back to us, huh?
Yeah, it may be a minute or two, but
well, that's not a problem. I do have some content I'm going to pull up here for these guys, just to kind of show you what we're up to. One of the things that I'm working on right now on my railroad is the expansion of one end, which is it goes into the closet, but I'm going to pull a video up here. And this particular video itself is looking at the expansion. I've gone into a closet, and I just wanted to gain some trackage. And by adding, in this case, you're going to see 4 tracks. They get put in, it's roughly 13 car spots. And the reason I wanted to have that extra space was just for operations. And I wanted the ability to be able to add this little extra area. So you're dealing with basically a 24-inch deep closet there. And I just dropped in that little platform, added my tracks, and was able to give myself a little bit more. We got all kinds of stuff going on here.
Yeah, really. Hey.
But that's what I was doing with the railroad itself. I've added that on the railroad of mine. It's just kind of additional staging.
Yeah, I jumped in. Yeah. Okay.
And then I'll show you a couple other ones here, guys. This is just another. Here's another look at. I'm going to close that one out. I'm going to give you another look at what that ink wash does. So that ink wash itself, again, it's made by Tamiya. It's just a little container. I have multiple different colors that I use, and the one that I had shown you before was the brown. This one is the black. This car itself is only washed in this accent color. That's all that's been applied to it. Otherwise, that's a factory tangent car, and I just added the black accent, and it's literally just a wash. You can wash as much on or as off as you want. The light areas on the decking is created by just dragging an X-Acto blade across it to lighten some of those areas. But that car itself is done solely using the panel accent wash. And then later on, I would probably want to come in and add some chalks and some other colors, but that's a fantastic product if you don't have it already. We've got you back in here with us, Bill.
I do apologize, Bill. I'm having sort of all kinds of the squirrels are not cooperating on the treadmill.
Well, not a problem. We try to carry the football for you when you were gone,
And
so
you
I don't know if we're with it or without it, depending on.
You're doing great. You're doing great, and I appreciate the backup. I really do.
Absolutely.
Tina from Mojave Model Railroad says, with you modeling a specific year and time, do you ever feel you are missing out on a lot of new products that don't fit the time in space, or maybe does he collect other eras as well?
That's a great question. And I think because so many good products are out there, I'm actually saving myself maybe a little bit of money by not getting into all the modern stuff, because there's cool stuff out there. And even go back the other way, the older stuff that's out there, I think Scale Train's doing their turbines, and you've got some stuff out there that's like, that's cool. But locking myself into an era helps me stay focused. Would I like to get some of the newer power? As a rail fan, I always look at the BNSF and I just say, they're all orange pumpkins. They all look the same. I don't see a difference between an ACE to an elemental P. They all blend together for me. An SD60 or an SD, maybe an SD70 is the last thing I can identify on the rails, unless I'm looking at the very front step and I'm reading what exact type of locomotive it is. So on the modeling side, I'm probably missing out a little bit. But every announcement I see coming out by Athearn and Scale Trains, and they're all saying they got these Gevos coming out, I'm sitting there going, whew, my wallet survived another one.
I hear that. I definitely do. Split Rock 323 says, best discussions is when we talk about things we did wrong and how we improved or fixed it.
I totally agree, though. I mean, you think about it. Some of the things that you make a mistake on, going back to my dad and that locomotive, it's not ideal, and it's probably not even something he wants me admitting that we had happen. But if you see the locomotive after we repair it or get it looking back to normal, people are going to look at it and go, well, how'd you do it? You know, it's like, well, I thought that's the one that you said you sprayed and it frosted on you. Well, it is. Well, that's it now. And what did we do to get there? So in season 3 here, the GN of 1970, I'm going to cover that. I'm going to take that locomotive and you're going to see what I do. I haven't taken it even out of the box yet, so I don't even know what steps I'm going to take, but I have a couple of different materials that I'll probably consider using. But fellow modelers a lot of times chime in, much like a group like this here, and say, this is what I do. This is how I handle it. This is what I changed. And this is how I get rid of the frosted effect.
Right.
So
I always like throwing the hat into the ring.
Yes.
You know, because you never know what you're going to come out with. You might come out with a really great idea or something you haven't thought about, or something you have thought about. We're a little trepidatious about attempting, but then someone says, hey, I did it. I know what you're talking about. I know what you feel you got, but go ahead and do it because it will turn out all right. You know, and then that may be what the confidence that you need, you know, to get it done. But it again, it's, you know, like you were talking about, Tina brought up the idea about not getting other stuff that you may like. We interviewed Tommy Kleminski, and he is an adamant man that if it does not fit into his era of his railroad, it's not going on his layout.
Well, that's Tom right here.
Oh, yes. I have that book.
You can't go wrong with it. Building the Right Size Layout, Tom Kleminski. Tom, I've been fortunate enough, and I know he's somebody that I actually didn't mention in actually motivating me to get my railroad started. Tom
Okay.
is I consider him a mentor, but I consider him also just a friend. We talk about stuff outside of railroad related things, where to travel, vacation, things like that. But Tom is genuinely, he's a good guy. He's
Yes.
honest with everything that he tells you.
Yes.
And when it really comes down to motivation, it's guys like Tom that really help motivate to get stuff done. Now, this book that I just showed there, Building the Right Size Layout, I think it was about halfway into it. Tom actually covered my railroad, and you'll see my track plan in there. You'll see kind of how, here's the Hiawatha Elevator District. He covers the way I modeled, and the reason he covered my railroad was because I'm doing it pretty close to 1-to-1. My buildings are about 4 or 5 feet long. Tom encouraged me to kind of get the bench work going and then document it as I went. So I did that, and he was able to then put it into the book. But his inspiration and a lot of his kind of just encouragement along the way, he'd send an email and just say, hey, where are we at with this? And, I'd say, I'm about halfway through it. He goes, well, tell me when you get closer to finishing it.
Right. So it gave you the incentive to push forward to get it finished so that you could then
Absolutely.
report back to Tom and say, yes, no. Human City Junction, Heath wants to know, wait, you mean I do not need to own one of everything ever produced? No.
Only if you want to.
Only if you want to. And Chris Lambert says something that's pretty good. He goes, mistakes in life create wisdom for the future.
That's true too. I mean, that's where you do learn. You don't come up with all these answers. Nobody shot out of their mom's, southern region and had all the answers, even though there are guys out there that claim they do.
No, you're absolutely right about that. I've always said that. Human City Junction, once again, Heath, he asked, how do you find a mentor in model railroading?
I think it's discussion and having conversation with guys. I've been fortunate enough to get to know even Tom Gazer here. He's a master model railroader. He's sharing a lot of information just that he's doing and how he's doing it. And I feel like that's the same type of thing where you guys that are out there, I don't know if I'd necessarily refer to myself as a mentor, but I sure do want to help other modelers. And one of those things that I got up on the screen here happens to be 187 scale vehicles. But it's showing you guys the techniques and how I take something from, basically nothing, adding a little paint to it, adding some details to it, and creating something that's unique and different. So the one on the right is factory. The one on the left is the one that I detailed up.
Nice.
So this type of thing to me, so I'm just going to say from a motivation standpoint, a fellow modeler here in the cities, Curtis, he started coming to railroad shows and saying, hey, check out this vehicle I did. And I thought, oh, that's kind of neat. It's different. This is the decal set that I created to be able to create these trucks. But as he kept coming to shows, showing me things, I said, you know what? That's something we're missing in the railroad world. Most of us are running around with this type of looking car when you could detail it and have it look more realistic.
Right.
It's not a lot. You change out the wheels, you change out the grill, you maybe repaint it, and you've got something that's not so toy-like, and then be able to bring it to something that's a little bit more natural or have different wheels on it again.
Right. And give it a little bit more authenticity to the layout.
Right. Well, this is a guy that he motivated me. He became kind of a mentor of the vehicle world. I ran into him at a show. We always kind of joke when we're at the shows a lot of times, that we're going to do show and tell. And he says, well, I brought a couple cars. Do you want to see them? And sure, it's cool to see. That's where you learn. And Curtis indirectly kind of became a mentor in the vehicle world just by showing me some of these little techniques that you can do to make these things look a little bit more realistic.
Now, are these custom decals that you have made yourself?
They are. They are. So I'm a graphic designer by trade. That's actually what I do for a living.
Okay.
So these decals that I created, I'm able to scale them and get them exactly to the model themselves. And as I've always said to guys, I go, if anybody wants to do one of these C10 pickups, you can reach out to me and I'll send you a set of decals. I mean, I think a set like this would be like $10. And I'll drop it in the mail. I'll send it to you and you can create your own C10. Now, a lot of guys will say, will you create it for me? That's where I think you start to lose the modeling side. Because I'm not saying this stuff is rocket science.
No, I know.
To be able to tape something off, you don't have to do a two-tone.
Right.
But it's simple enough that
Right.
you can have the accomplishment, and then you can have that sense of pride that, no, that's a custom truck that I did.
And where did you get the details? The grill and the wheels. Where would you pick those up?
So it would depend. So like this is a factory one on the left. This is the factory the way you buy it. They call it Dazed and Confused. That's the movie that it was from.
Uh-huh.
So it's a modern aluminum wheel. Now
Right.
this wheel came off of a 1955 Malibu models Chev, and that gives you a little bit more of a street look. This one here is actually a tangent tire, or Trident rather. Excuse me.
Right.
Trident makes a lot of different big pickup trucks. Well, if you want to put these big meaty wheels on it,
Mm-hmm.
use a Trident wheel. So I
Right.
do cannibalize cars to a certain degree to be able to create that. Now the grills themselves, the black inlay, this is one
Yeah.
that you can use just black paint
Right.
and put a little black paint on and wipe it off.
Right.
And then this one here is the decal. So that's
Right.
the decal, like this sheet here. There's the grill. It's right there.
Split Rock 323 wants to ask wants me to ask you about the radio antenna you put on HO scale cars.
Now that's crazy. It's made by Engineering. It is 0.004 stainless steel, and it is fine. Now I did one for Tom. I don't have a photo of it up on the screen here, but the antenna is so thin that you could prick yourself with your kind of like a little blood prick if you put your finger right down on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have an example, I don't think, in my vehicles, but I have put antennas on cars, and Engineering is the one that sells it, and it's the thinnest piece of metal you've ever seen.
Right. And Mojave Model Railroad wants to know, your layout is a shelf layout. We all dream of big shelf layouts. Do you feel keeping things smaller help to keep you motivated compared to a large layout that can get you overwhelming?
I'd say yes and no. And the reason I say yes and no is because I'm fortunate enough to kind of live in both worlds. My dad, he has the one that fills the whole basement. I have plans of filling more basement, but at the moment, this has been kind of the pacifier to be able to kind of get me by and let me see, like, this is my dad's railroad. We had an operating session. A few guys were over. So that gives you an idea as far as the railroad itself. It does fill a 22 by 22 square basement. And, it's fun to operate. But to answer that question, I think the shelf allows me to enjoy modeling at home, see stuff move. I can still operate and switch, but I don't have to have this feeling of I got to build the empire, because I think the empire can get intimidating. It can get daunting. It can get overwhelming. We got a fellow modeler, Jeff, that we operate with, and he said, you know what? I go to some guys' railroads, I look at it and I think, wow, that's amazing. And then I go home and I turn on the lights in my room and I think, oh, this is depressing. And I shut off the lights.
Ralph Renzetti wants to know, where did you get the DeLorean car?
So the DeLorean is made by a company in Germany. It was on eBay for a period of time. I don't recall the manufacturer right offhand, but it was in the neighborhood of probably a $30 to $35 car. I did swap the wheels out. I put on wheels that are Bush wheels, and then I put decals on the wheels to be able to make it look like the DeLorean.
Mm-hmm.
But the guy did like 3 different versions of it. It was kind of a light blue box, but I don't recall exactly who that was, but it was somebody on eBay. They are out of Germany, and they modified and customized and made it into the DeLorean from Back to the Future.
Right. Eric Hall says he remembers a loss of GM cars in the late 60s, early 70s that had the antenna built into the windshield, not an aerial on the fender like other cars.
Sure.
So, and stuff like that. Heath is leaving. I think he's got to go do his own show, which starts at right after this one at 10 o'clock. So he says, thank you very much for a great show. Good to hear more from you. He says, I need to check all your videos out. And to Roy Eltham, you skipped over my very important question. No, it's just that the question wasn't for the MRL Who's Big Bill Talking To. That's for another channel. So, yeah, what was I going to say? I got lost in thought there. Just modeling itself what is one of the best releases that you have from? What is it that you gain out of modeling?
I think for me, I always say it's kind of from having an artistic mind. I jump all over the place with the stuff that I'm doing. But modeling and weathering is one that I feel like I can sit down, I can lock in. It's a stress reliever, and you're not having this, I need to get it to this level to be able to be good enough. If I'm doing it for my own railroad, my goal is to make it look as close as I can to the prototype. So a lot of times that's the goal. The stress relief is just being able to go through the process. Sometimes it's just using chalks. The majority of the stuff I do are chalks. I do a little bit with the washes, and I don't do nearly as much with airbrushing and that sort of thing.
Not a big airbrush aficionado.
It's just kind of one of those things that I consider. It's just kind of a hit and miss. It's a weakness in my skill set, and if it's a weakness in my skill set, then I kind of think, well, it's not going to turn out very good if I attempt to do it. It's not that I haven't, but you kind of refine, like just a couple examples. Like this is a straight chalk, nothing but chalk on it, and a little bit of acrylic on the high spots of the rib. This is another one that's just chalks with a little bit of acrylic to create the chipping look. That's that same other car. And then now this one is a combination of techniques where it's basically a chalked car, but I used masking tape that I put over the car to be able to get this worn kind of look. When you look at a prototype photo, all I'm looking at are textures and thinking, how can I get that texture? Well, if you look at the side of those cement cars, they developed this weird kind of, I don't know if it had been washed or when rain gets on it, but that texture was the same type of texture that when you peel old masking tape off of glass or something, you know how it leaves the glue residue?
Yes.
That texture is what, in my mind, I'm thinking, I got to create that. And that's what I created for this particular car. And this particular car here was all washes with a little bit of chalk. Now I do cover a Great Northern car in the GN in 1970. So coming up, you're going to see a Great Northern car, which might have been this one. I think it is this car. But I'll show you the techniques of how I end up bringing the light patterns in, how I fade the goat, how I do create these little blotches and chips and nicks and stuff on the roof. Again, it's just another technique.
Right. What kind of chalks do you use? What kind of weathering powders do you use?
I'm big on the Doc O'Brien's weathering. So it's Micromark. And I really only bounce between kind of the grungy gray, black, white, and there's another kind of brown or rust that I'll work in as well.
Have you ever used the Monroe models?
I've not.
Oh,
yes, I'm familiar with them. Yes.
Right. Ralph Renzetti turned the Mudfather, aka the Mudfather. Ralph Renzetti turned us. Yeah, that's what we call him. He turned us onto this. Turned a lot of us onto it. Weathering powders, self-adhering pigments that they are, and they work really well. I have exact 2 sets of the Doc O'Brien. I like them as well. But I kind of I'm a little bit more partial to these, only simply because the different many colors that they offer, and they're very adhered. You know, you take a bit of an old well, I have one right here, one of those old not paintbrushes, but those throwaway silver brushes you buy like at what do you call it? At flea markets or at train shows. The guy sells them like for a penny a piece, and you buy 1,000 of them.
Yes, they're basically kind of a throwaway brush.
Right, a throwaway brush. And oh yeah, here it is. I got one right here. These things.
Yep.
And then what he said was to cut off the tip to make it a very, very
yes.
hard stipple, and then you just bring it down and everything. So it kind of like you get that effect, and it adheres a lot better too.
Right. That's what I use. So on the bottom of this car, exactly what you had shown. It was I consider it a soft brush to do the chalking. So again, this is an all chalk car with just a little acrylic up on the top. But the bottom of each rib, I end up taking that little worn out brush, and I call it the kind of a stubby brush.
Right.
And I work the chalk in, and you can just really work it in. And it does, like you said, it bites, and it's just more aggressive on laying the chalk in there.
Are your kids involved in this?
A little bit. So I've got 3 little ones.
Oh, okay.
My youngest doesn't really have a clue, so she's 4, but she
Oh,
doesn't really pay attention to the trains that
right,
much.
right.
But I've got little ones here, like it's my son and my daughter. We do outside of trains, we do slot cars.
Nice.
But that's just something that we do as a family. But trains are the same way. We go through playing, I guess we say playing trains or operating. I let one of them be the brakeman and let the other one be the engineer.
Right.
And the brakeman is usually going to be Lexi, who's the older, and I let her go along and uncouple cars. And then I've got a switch list, and with that switch list, I just read off what cars we want to be dropping here or there to be able to basically spot cars.
Right. And where do you get all the memorabilia, the railroad memorabilia? I noticed.
Over time, I've just slowly collected it. There are local guys here at a lot of the shows. If you run across anybody, so here's kind of a look at the stuff I've got in. This is actually in the room itself. The headlight here came from a friend of mine. I did get this EMD, so it's a blank. It's a blank lens. Prototypically, the railroad did have these, but it says EMD, and they put that in the bottom lens on their in this case, an SW9.
Right.
But the number boards, I end up picking the one up here up top. That was off of a Northern Pacific F unit, and that came out of a collection up in Duluth. The 2 GP20 pieces, which is the number board, and then the plate there, that came from a local show here at the fairgrounds. And then another modeler locally, he had an M&S no trespassing sign. I like the M&S.
Yes.
And there's a DM&I, a little pup that goes into kind of the CTC logic or signal logic.
Right.
And then a caboose marker, which is from the Milwaukee Road. But I do have a crew lounge. So you mentioned, some of the pieces that are there. This is my crew lounge.
Oh, sweet.
The crew lounge is set up that I've got a switch stand here. Obviously a signal. This is a DM&IR signal, M&S caboose marker. The TV is for watching, obviously, hockey games and everything else, but we can throw railroad videos up there. I've got magazine rack down below full of the Sioux, which is a historical society for the Sioux line. And then looking kind of the other direction, coming down our stairs from upstairs, this switch stand actually throws a rod underneath the steps and opens, and it opens what I call an oval office door. This is a door here.
Right.
And it opens up if you throw the switch stand, and it also locks it. So you don't go into the train room by going through that door.
Right.
But most of this stuff was acquired and collected over time through fellow modelers and just other railroad enthusiasts.
And the Minnesota Northfield and Southern Railway, is that a sign itself, or is that something that?
Nope, that's a diamond. It's a diamond off of one of their cabooses. So this one is off of caboose number 9. And the way I was able to identify it is these little tabs that are on the edges of the diamond. Right. Those tabs are different on all the cabooses.
Really?
So I went along and found if there's a tab above the N, a tab below the O, and then went and looked and said, okay, there's a tab above the E and a tab below the E. This one matched up to number 9. So that's what I was able to narrow it down to.
And what it's hanging on, is that a corrugated metal?
Yep, it's old barn metal. So it's some old corrugated metal that a local farmer was getting rid of. I ended up picking it up on Facebook Marketplace and then hanging it up on the wall and hung the diamond in front of it.
Well, this certainly, as a former transit worker, this crew room is a lot more nicer than the crew rooms I used to be in, and stuff. And to make it realistic, you should have coffee that when you pour it, it's like mud when it comes out.
Yes, it's thick.
Yeah.
It's been there a while.
That's what kept us awake during the midnight hours. I have a similar, I tell in my house here, where if I have an operating session and I want to make it authentic crew room prototypical, what I do is on the bathroom, what I usually do is I take the door off the hinges, and I don't have a door on the hinges, and I loosen the toilet seat so it wobbles.
Oh, real experience.
Right. And then what I do is I take the toilet paper out, and I take sheets of newspaper and I cut up small little slivers, and I leave them on the counter,
Sure.
Yeah, because I want to give it, and I take wet newspaper and I throw it in the corner, and then I turn the heat up in the bathroom a lot, so you get that musty, mildewy smell. So, I want it to be as authentic as possible for when guys,
Well, I think a lot of times experience is what it's all about. I mean, that goes for operations. I mean, my goal with my operations in my room, I was trying to keep it open. I didn't want to have a bunch of people. I mean, obviously, currently today there is trackage that swings all the way around. I think I had a video of the actual room and currently where it's at, which I'll pull up. But while I'm getting there, setting up the experience, I think, is huge.
Yeah, right. It's setting up the experience is huge. Is like, it really is. And when you go to someone's house for an operating session, it's more than apt, to be as aware that you are in somebody else's home,
Yes.
and respect the limits and the boundaries that are given. Don't go upstairs, don't go here, don't, which is absolutely paramount. But, saying that, when I went to operate at Joe Desmond's house on his Conrail and New Jersey line, I was like, yeah, Frank DeLauro, my good buddy, my former compadre on the Transit Authority. Frank and I can tell you stories. When I first started with the New York City Transit Authority, I was a brand new conductor, and I had to work up in 1981. And I had my first day on the job was on the A line up at 207th Street. And I got up there and I said to the dispatcher, I said, could you put, where's the men's room? And he goes, it's out, just go out to the crew room and you'll see it. So I walked out and there was this big plywood door with a rope on it. So I went back inside and I said, where? And he goes, the plywood door with the rope. Just go. So I went in there and guess what? All the urinals were against the wall and the toilet was in the middle of the floor, right in the middle of the room. No enclosure,
walls.
no enclosure, and I was like, I went back outside and I said, and he looked at me, he said, kid, that's the bathroom. If you got to use it, use it. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you, so I went there and I was like, Mr. Shy and, the whole 9 yards, but you learn, and thank God for the women that came on the job because they fought to have bathrooms remodeled, because some of the places
and walls.
My friend Frank will tell you horror stories, things that you endured when you went down there, but so you want to give that realism, but you don't want it too real. You want to make it as comfortable. Like I was saying earlier, when I went to Joe Desmond's house to operate, I was a little bit apprehensive, and my wife was asking me, what are you apprehensive about? And I was like, well, I'm going to operate on this guy's layout, and I don't want to mess up and everything, and this is new to me. And she's like, excuse me, she says, didn't you operate like $2.5 million worth of equipment per car and carry like 2,500 people at a time for rush hour? She said, this is playtime. This is fun time. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It is. And when I got there and I realized when I was bringing 2 trains in, my job was to bring 2 layups up out of the track, out of the storage yard.
Sure.
And when the dispatcher said to me, okay, just, set the train over there behind signal so-and-so, the light bulb went off in my head and I was like, wait a minute. I did this for like 30 some plus years. I know how to do this. And then immediately I went back into his crew room and I took off my shoes and I put my feet up on the ottoman, and Joe comes down. He goes, what are you doing? I'm doing what I used to do in my old job, drink coffee and watch TV.
That's right.
Until you call me. When I'm needed, I'm going to go,
Right.
And stuff like that. CV Railroad in HO scale says, hey, my crew room has a couch, but it's only for the shrink I need when I need my head examined for spending so much money. I hear you, brother.
Yeah, I was gonna say, fair enough.
Yeah. I used to rock like this, but now I rock like this, so I'm cured.
Well, here I'm pulling up as a video for you. This is my full railroad and kind of how things are set up, so people can see. This is Sue the Milwaukee Road, 1985, in its current state right now. I do have it set for an operating session, so cars are staged and in their spots. There's a couple locomotives that are currently not supposed to be there, the Critter and the SW1200, but they're just sitting there because I am testing a few things along with the GP20 that's sitting there. But So you're looking at the southernmost end of the Hiawatha Elevated District. And that itself, as far as industry wise, each place roughly can handle about 5 to 10 cars, depending on which elevator you're shoving into. But the large elevator there, it is pretty close to actual scale length. The spacing's a little off because I got areas where I need to actually have gaps between the head house and the elevator. This Minneapolis Seed Company. And then lastly, just of course, a Milwaukee Road 50-foot. Now that car is probably a little too old for my era, but at the same time, I like the weathering on it. So I'm keeping it, I'm rolling it and using it.
Sure, it's my layout.
That's right.
And also now you haven't done a video in quite a while.
No, last one I did, I think was it ended in June, something like that.
June of this year.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So you have a surprise. You're going to be premiering a video on Friday. Is that correct?
I'm going to premiere the GN in 1970. Will start on Friday, but you guys, anybody that's in the stream right now, you guys get to watch it. You can start watching it tonight if you want, because I'm giving you guys a open link that is used just for you guys. Ari just threw it up there for you. It's in the comments section.
Yeah,
that link will take you to the GN in 1970. You can kick back and enjoy some of that quality humor. I don't have a ton, I don't think, in the GN in 1970, but if you wait to the very end, you'll hear from your beloved Curmudgeon. But you got to wait to the very end.
I love the Curmudgeon. I love the fact that he does speak his mind, and the fact that it is an alter ego. It is exactly what the hobby needs, because sometimes we all have those grouse moments, and it's nice to know that you're not alone in the way you think about things. And
No, and when I do the Curmudgeon voice, it actually puts a strain. My voice is
I believe
it's a little hoarse, because when I get into Curmudgeon mode, just for you guys, at least for entertainment purposes here, we can throw on the old this is the Curmudgeon. See?
Yeah, and then you put the beard on.
Well, I put the beard on. The beard on is just done through the Snapchat.
Yeah, right.
All right, here's the Curmudgeon coming at you for the gripe of the pod. I tell you, those guys that come on to these shows and they start carrying on about all that stuff, they really even know what they're talking about. You just act like you know what you're talking about. I tell you right now, you better be telling us what you actually mean and what you think, because the Curmudgeon, he's on to you. And that's the Curmudgeon's gripe of the pod. There's a live Curmudgeon for you.
There we go. We got it here tonight. So
that's how I create them. That's how I usually just make it up on the fly. So that's why sometimes they can be a little hinky. But I guess my hair gets a little wild after throwing
That's
that
all
on.
right. That's all right.
But that's the Curmudgeon in a nutshell. That's how I record them. That's how I do them. And there you go.
How your wife? How is she with the hobby? Is she on board with this?
Oh, I mean, we support one another in all capacities, so of course.
Good. I just wonder. My wife is the same, and very supportive, and a lot of the other modelers' wives that I know are very, very supportive and very gracious of the hobby. My wife affectionately says, "At least I know where he is every night." So.
Well, that's always true, and I'm very grateful for Kristen, my wife, for understanding. A lot of times I record a lot of stuff, so I'm asking a lot of times that people aren't walking around in the kitchen, so you don't hear footsteps and whatnot. They went upstairs, they're getting ready for bed tonight, and I'm able to at least have the conversation, and they're respectful of the space. But for the hobby itself, she's always said, it's like, if you enjoy it, go for it. I mean, I don't discourage her in the stuff that she's doing. I always support her in the stuff that she's interested in. And when it comes down to it, if you support what I'm interested in, we're both kind of on a give and take and understanding exactly where, if you're happy doing it and you're having fun with it, have at it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the bottom line, at least in my opinion.
Tina says she gets to go shopping penny for what he spends on the railroad.
Oh, fair enough. That'll work.
Yeah. I just hand over my pension and Social Security check to my wife on the fourth Wednesday of every month and the first of the month.
Well, what happens a lot of times, at least I've found, is that so much of the stuff can be recycled within the hobby.
Oh, yes.
So if I need, and you made a great point, we talked the other night about the proto throttle. I do have a proto throttle. I do like it. And a lot of times people say it's too expensive, but you take 2 or 3 locomotives that are out there today, sell them, you can get yourself a proto throttle in no time. I mean, in reality, you don't need probably all the locomotives that you have. But one proto throttle for me, it works. I ended up getting a second one because it was so much fun, and it is really good for kids. If you have any kids that are interested at all in trying to run trains, a knob, they can easily turn all the way up and be flying. Where the proto throttle, I've got it actually set up in such a way that you can only notch up really to notch 4, and it's only doing about 15 scale miles an hour. So they can throw it up to 8. I don't care. The locomotive's not going to go flying because it's programmed that way.
Right. That is so. Bill, as we come to the end here, I have 2 questions.
Sure.
What is the worst? What is the most unlikeliest thing that you do not like about model railroading?
That I don't like? I mean, I think I think that's a good question just in general. But as far as model railroading is concerned, boy, my least favorite thing is waiting for paint to dry. I mean, that's where I if I custom paint stuff, I think it's funny. A fellow modeler, Joe Binish here in the cities, I joked and says, you can't decal wet paint. And he goes, yeah, you can.
It just don't come out that nice.
No, it just doesn't come out maybe as nice as you'd like. But I think that's one of them. But then the other one probably would have to be the advancement of a lot of the technologies that are here now that you didn't have back then. So my dad's railroad itself is actually it's converted from DC to DCC, and when we made that conversion, it went fairly seamless. But with all the technologies that are out there with the Arduinos and the ability to be able to have programming and servos throwing turnouts, all that stuff has helped improve the GN in 1970, which we do cover in this season that we're coming up to. But all that stuff that is kind of embedded in an old railroad, we're trying to overcome. And I think over time we will. But we lost Bill here for a moment, so you guys all hang with me.
I'm back. I do want to apologize for this interruption.
No, I still try to carry that torch. But my point is technology really, it's evolution and having to kind of redo stuff we've already done. That to me kind of feels like I'd hate to dive into something and tear stuff out, but it has improved. It has gotten better. I go back to proto throttle just real briefly. The ability to program locomotives specifically to function like the real thing.
Yes.
All that stuff is making things so much better.
Yes.
And I would say the one thing I don't like is that I've got probably 20, 30 locomotives on my dad's railroad that got programmed for an old type of thought process, which was we were speed matching and setting them up to run together. But I like the prototype thing now even more. So you got to go back into those locomotives and reprogram them.
Derek Alexander says the worst thing is when Bill says myself, well, we're almost done. Yes, unfortunately. Yes, we are. But I understand I recently had some engines redone and they put them in, and the gentleman who did it, Mark Jewett, did a really good job, and he, step down and the CVCs and everything. And because I mostly do switching on this layout, and I have switching engines, and he did a great job for me, because when I come to the stop, the engine now slows down just as if I was operating it, and it comes to that stop. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I like. And that's exactly what I wanted. So he did a few switching engines for me, and I just love when they're operating. And the best part is the guys that I used to work with, when they come over, once in a while they'll operate, and I won't tell them about the engine, and then they'll see it and they're like, oh, that's just like when we used to work. I said, yeah, that's exactly
pretty cool.
What it's like. Someone needs to put an ankle tracker on Bill if he keeps getting lost. The local police have spares. Not really. Not in the New York City. They don't stuff, they don't. We won't get into that end of the conversation. Bill, I want to thank you so much for taking time away from your very, very busy schedule, your family life, and being a part of the show and coming on. It was really nice to have you on in such your channel is so inspiring, and it's so well done and so informative, and thank you so very, very much. We did put the link up for the show that will the new video that will appear this Friday night, so you guys out there have the ability to go see it tonight. You've been given the opportunity to see it before the rest of the world sees it. So Bill, thank you again so much for being on. I greatly appreciate it. By the way, I have one more question.
Sure.
Do you know Rod Stewart?
Not personally.
We're trying to get him on the show, but he's very elusive. I used to have him on at the end, but we got so wrapped up, like tonight we got so wrapped up, so I could never get him in, and I would apologize, and then he would storm off and not take my phone calls anymore.
That's what you get for leaving him in the green room, though. You can't leave him in there with that the sushi.
Yeah, I wanna thank you again for coming on. I also want to thank Ari and John out there, who are the producer / director of this show. I know we had a lot of technical difficulties on my end tonight, and then getting going off, and they held it together. And I also want to thank Dwight for reaching out to Bill, stalking him, and tackling him at the show so that he could get on the show. I greatly appreciate it. And Bill, thank you so much for carrying the show. Thank God your name is Bill and my name is Bill, so that but thank you for filling in.
A couple of times there, Bill was talking to nobody, but hopefully some people might have been listening.
Oh no, you were talking to the crowd out there. You were talking to them. They heard you. So
it is great too. I just want to say thank you for having me on, but at the same time, thank you for doing the stuff that you do. It can be, long sometimes, and navigating an interview at times can be a little bit daunting in its own right.
Yeah.
With or without any technical glitches. But
yes,
thank you for the stuff that you do, and I appreciate you taking the time to have me on.
You're quite welcome. Quite welcome. So with that said, thank you, Bill. And remember, we got a trifecta coming up. I got it over here. The 15th, I'm going to be back on the 15th next Sunday with Dr. David Vollmer. He is a meteorologist, and he'll be on the show. And then the 16th, you got Johnny's Train Talk Show. And then on the 18th is a Saturday night at 9 p.m. You got Railroad Empires with Andy and Andy Crawford and Robert Holloman. I was going to say Robert Duvall, the actor. I don't know why I was going to say that, but definitely they're going to be on. And the 15th, the 16th, and the 18th of December, and then that's going to be the end of the season for us as we go into the new year. We're going to have some new shows for you in January. Got something in the works with Mr. The Track Planner, Bill Baronic, and we're going to do a show with him and stuff like that. So we got a lot of interesting things coming up for you. But the 15th, the 16th, and the 18th, you got me next week. You got Johnny's Train Talk Show, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You can come on just like this, and you got the Railroad Empires at 9 p.m. on Saturday evening. So you got a trifecta coming up. So put it down on your calendar, scratch it off, grab the popcorn, adult beverage if that's what you want, or an iced tea, and sit back and have some model railroading fun. And with that said, I want to thank you guys for being out there and for watching and for being a part of this. It's greatly appreciated. We really, truly, greatly appreciate you participating and asking all these great questions and being a part of this show. Because if we weren't there, like I always said, I'll be talking to dead air. But thank you so much. So I want to say, be well, be safe, and be blessed, and we'll see you on the radio.